Okay, hello, my his site lecture classes. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good midnight for those who are, yes, burning the midnight oil just to watch my recorded video. So much appreciation to you guys. Yes, feeling the day. Okay, ayan, meron na naman yung bagyo, class. Okay. Sana wala nang bagyo after nito. Okay. Yeah, did you? Okay. Did you know na meron na namang parating na bagyo? Okay, si Rolly. Ayan, sa after ni Pepito, si Kinta. Tapos ngayon si Rolly naman. Okay, so anyway, I hope everybody's safe. Okay, wherever you may be. Ayan, yes. So, for this video, I will be discussing about the other media which are used for infiltration and embedding in histopath. Okay, so last week I already gave two videos regarding the introductory part of impregnation and embedding. I also gave a video on your paraffin wax as well as the different substitutes for your paraffin wax. And then, of course, for the last video, I will be discussing about the other media. So remember that there are how many types, how many general types of media? Okay, yes, very good. Ayan, hindi na bagyo ang ating knowledge. Okay, so we have four general types of media. Okay, so we have paraffin, so we're done with that. And then we also have your celoidine, okay? And then we have your gelatin. And then lastly, we have your plastic. Okay, so for this video, to start off, to kick off our discussion regarding the other media, let's start with your celoidine. Okay, so what is celoidine? Again, if you can still recall what I have mentioned in the first video, your celoidine, this is otherwise referred to as your collodion. Okay, ring a bell? Ring, 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 ring. Okay, so when we say collodion, remember it's the same reagent that we use for decalcified sections, right? In order to prevent them from being washed out after immersion in your acid alcohol during staining. Okay, so I do hope you can still remember that. Feeling DJ talaga. Okay, ayan. So, celoidine, we have your collodion or celoidine. Okay, so what is your celoidine or collodion? So, chemically speaking, when we say celoidine, this is a purified pyroxylin nitrocellulose. Okay, so I repeat, this is a purified pyroxylin nitrocellulose, and it has a wide range of application in the laboratory. Why? Because temperatures are not applicable in your celoidine. Okay, so we do not make use of heat when we do our celoidine processing. Okay, because what maintains their liquid state are your solvents. Okay, unlike when we talk about your paraffin as well as the different substitutes for your paraffin, what maintains their liquid state is high temperature. Okay, so your celoidine, the liquid state of this medium is maintained by the presence of your solvent. So we don't have to worry about exposing your tissue sample in heat. Okay? And so also, the difference. Okay, okay ka nang okay eh. Okay, the difference saglit nawawala ako. Okay, the difference what do you call this? Disadvantages or effects or consequences which are attributed to the exposure of your tissue sample to heat are avoided. So that's why if you're going to look at the application of your Celoydine in histopath, you are able to handle or process various types of tissue samples. Okay, so in particular, what are the different specimens which are processed using your Celoydine? Okay, so it says there, number one, this is suitable for specimens that contain large cavities. Ayan, baka hindi ko na naman na-record. Okay, large cavities or hollow spaces which tend to collapse. So a good example of this would be your eye samples. Okay, so your eye samples, you can process them making use of your Celoydine during infiltration and embedding. Another, okay, your Celoydine is also suitable for larger embryos. So that means embryos which have undergone development inside the uterus. Okay, significant development inside the uterus. Okay, so in addition to these specimens that have large cavities or hollow spaces that tend to collapse. So other specimens which you can process using Celoydine would also include your hard and dense tissue specimens. Okay? So I have several times, di ba? I have several times emphasized your hard and dense tissue samples. Okay? So examples of hard and dense tissue samples, we have your bones and teeth. Okay? Teeth. Teeth. Okay. So remember, I mentioned and I forgot where, but I think sa paraffin, right? Yes, sa paraffin considerations, if I'm not mistaken, on paraffin wax. Can you use your paraffin wax for dense tissue samples? Pwede ba siyang gamitin? Pwede ba siyang gamitin? Yes, provided na may vacuum ka. Tama? But if in the absence of your equipment, okay, your hard and dense tissue specimens may be infiltrated and embedded using your Celoydine. Because remember, our problem when it comes to your dense tissue specimens is that they would require prolonged immersion. But again, But again, prolonged immersion will, in paraffin, will cause, okay, your tissue sample to be over-hardened, okay, to be excessively brittle, and to be excessively shrunken. Diba? If you can still remember yung prolongation na minention ko, that's why we do not usually use your paraffin wax. Okay? And so, another or one alternative that you can use in place of your paraffin or instead of your paraffin would be another type of general medium, and that is your Celoydine. So remember, in Celoydine, we don't have to worry about heat. Okay? There is no heat here. Walang mainit dito. Okay? We don't have to worry about it. All right. And so it is one of the applications of your Celoydine. Okay? To infiltrate and embed hard and dense tissue specimens. All right? Ayan. So your Celoydine, it is available in several concentrations. And just like what I have mentioned, when we talk about the available Celoydine solution in the market, okay? So ang components niya all the time would be, of course, your Celoydine. Okay, man. Okay, we have Celoydine. And in order to maintain the liquid state of your Celoydine, you have to make use of a solvent. Okay, you have to make use of a solvent. And when it comes to the solvent, so we use equal parts of ether and alcohol. Okay, so I repeat, in order to maintain the liquid state of your Celoydine, it has to be dissolved in your solvent. The solvent used we have your equal parts of ether and alcohol. Okay, so what are the different formulations of celloidine which are available? So we have what we call your thin celloidine. So your thin celloidine has a concentration of 2%. Okay, we also have your medium celloidine, which has a concentration of approximately or about 4%. And then lastly, we have your thick celloidine, which has a concentration of 8%. Okay, ayan. So those are the available formulations or concentrations of celloidine. Okay, so do not forget about that. Yan. So let us now move on to the different disadvantages and advantages of celloidine. Okay, and these are the ones which will affect our decision on whether we are supposed to make use of your celloidine or not. And apart from that, these advantages and disadvantages, it will also guide us in order for us to properly handle your celloidine in the laboratory. Okay? Yeah, so first let us discuss what is the disadvantage of your celloidine. Okay, one disadvantage of your celloidine is that your tissues cannot be cut as thin as they are with your paraffin. Okay? Kasi siguro nagtataka kayo, oh, hindi naman pala tayo gumagamit ng heat. Ito na naman, Miss Sem. Okay, lagi kang starry. Best Supporting Actress ang ating Miss Naide, because I always mention you in my videos, okay, whenever I speak in Tagalog. All right, okay. You might be wondering, why can we not make use of your celloidine for routine processing? Diba? Kasi if you're going to look at the major advantage of your celloidine, what is the major advantage? We do not expose your tissue sample to heat. Okay? Because heat is not required to maintain the liquid state of your celloidine. Then why not use it for routine processing? You might be wondering that. My answer to that is because of this disadvantage. Tissues cannot be cut as thin as they are with paraffin wax. Remember, okay, one of the advantages of your paraffin wax, is that you are able to cut sections which have a thickness of 4 to 6 micrometers. Tama? Okay. What is the significance of this thickness of your tissue section? This is the required thickness for routine histologic or histopathologic study, which is not the case in your celloidine. Your celloidine, okay, furthermore, okay, if you are going to use your celloidine, thin sections. So we have to qualify again. What do we mean, or what is thin sections? Thin sections, those which are less than 10 micrometers. Okay? Thin sections, in particular, less than 10 micrometers, are hard to cut. Okay? So I repeat, when you use your celloidine for infiltration and embedding, thin sections, less than 10 micrometers are hard to cut. Okay, remember 4 to 6 micrometers ang gusto natin. This is what is required for routine processing, for routine examination. If you will be having a hard time cutting thin sections of this, okay, or cutting sections of this thickness, 4 to 6, then you cannot really use it for routine processing. Otherwise, you will spend a lot of time doing your sectioning later on. Okay? And this will, of course, affect also the quality of tissue slides that we are going to produce for examination. Okay? So, thin sections, hindi niya kaya. Okay? Kaya niya naman, pero it's really very difficult. And most of the time, hindi talaga. Okay? Ayan. Okay. So, this disadvantage of your celoidine, it can actually be an advantage. Okay? It can be an advantage. In general, it's a disadvantage. But, okay, but when we talk about your neurological tissues, okay? When we talk about your neurological samples or tissues, what is recommended? Okay, what is recommended for our neurological tissues are thicker sections. And what are recommended for our neurological tissue samples are thicker sections. Okay, so that's why your celoidine, it can be used to process your neurological tissues. And your nervous tissues may be processed using your celoidine for infiltration and embedding. Why? Because again, your neurological tissues require thicker sections. So you don't have to worry about being able to produce sections with a thickness of less than 10 micrometers. Kasi ang neurological, usually, ang nire-require niyan ay greater than 10 micrometers. Okay? Ayan. So, if we are going to consider your neurological samples, then this disadvantage is actually an advantage. Okay, so it is recommended, your celoidine is recommended for this type of samples. Okay, yan. So that is rather the disadvantage of your celoidine. Okay, let us now move on to the advantages of your celoidine. Okay, again, just like what I have emphasized, the biggest advantage of your celoidine is that it does not require heat. Okay, and so the different um consequences which are attributed to heat, they are avoided. Thus, one advantage of your, or yes, that thus one advantage of your celoidine is that it causes much less shrinkage and distortion. Okay, it causes much less shrinkage and distortion. Okay, and since it is a slow process, ayan, sabi ko nga, whenever you encounter a slow process, okay, so it is usually less damaging or less detrimental as compared to your rapid ones. Okay, as compared to your rapid ones. Except of course in the case of your vacuum. Kasi yung vacuum naman, what makes it fast is a physical factor. It's not a chemical factor. Okay, ayan. So causes much less shrinkage and distortion. And apart from that, since it is a slow process, then the use of your celoidine, okay, is less detrimental to your tissue sample. Okay? Ayan. Ma'am, bakit much less? So, ibig sabihin ba, ma'am, meron pa rin, ma'am, why is it much less? Does it mean that we can still observe shrinkage and distortion? Definitely. Okay? You go back to the solvent. You go back to the solvent. What solvents do we use for your celoidine? Ether and alcohol. Okay? Remember, alcohol. Alcohol, one of the consequences of immersing your sample in alcohol is that there will be shrinkage, okay, and probable distortion of your tissue sample. Okay, ayan. So, meron pa din because of the solvents. However, it's not as pronounced because of the absence of heat. Okay? Yes. And then another um, advantage is that it has a rubbery consistency. And because of this rubbery consistency, it causes, okay, less, hindi naman without, but less distortion. Okay, less distortion to your tissue sections, right? So because of its rubbery consistency. Okay, may I just add also, because I mentioned that one of the solvents that you use in celoidine in order to maintain the liquid state of celoidine is the use of your ether. Okay, you have probably heard about ether in your lower chemistries before. So the reason why we are minimizing our use of ether in the laboratory is because this is a very flammable. Okay, this is a very flammable substance, and apart from that, it is also very volatile. Okay, so it is liable to cause fire. It's actually a fire hazard in the laboratory. Ayan. So it is very flammable and it is very volatile. So whenever you use ether in the laboratory, you have to be very careful. So it is actually recommended that you use ether in a fume hood. Yan, so that the ether vapors will not accumulate inside the room or inside the laboratory. Okay? As this is a very flammable substance. Okay? Ayan. So it is very flammable po. Alright? So those are the advantages and disadvantages of your celloidine. Now, in the laboratory, there is actually a formulation of celoidine. Ayan, and we call it your LVN. So LVN, this is otherwise, or this refers to, or this stands for low viscosity nitrocellulose. Okay. So your LVN, it has the same solubility characteristics. Thus, it is manufactured also in the same manner as that of your regular or ordinary celloidine. Okay, so that means your LVN, it is also soluble in okay, it is soluble in equal concentrations of ether and alcohol. Okay, so it is soluble in equal concentrations of ether and your alcohol. Okay, how does it differ from your normal or ordinary celloidine? So from the term itself, low viscosity nitrocellulose. Okay, so if it is present as, or if one of its characteristics is that it has a low viscosity, the good thing about it is we can use it in higher concentrations. You go back to the concentrations of celloidine that's available in the market. Ano yung mga nandun? The highest concentration is 8%. Okay, and that's relatively a low concentration, right? But because of the viscous characteristic of your ordinary celloidine, we cannot prepare higher concentrations. Hanggang 8% lang siya. Otherwise, if it's gonna be higher than 8%, then your celloidine is too viscous already. Too viscous that the penetration of your tissue sample during infiltration will be very difficult for your celloidine. Remember that celluloidine processing is already slow as it is, even if you make use of 8%. If you make that higher, if you make the concentration of your celluloidine higher, it will become more viscous, and of course, this will lead to a very slow process. Slower than slow. Okay? It will become slower than it is already. Naku ha, ayan. That's why I am emphasizing on the low viscosity nature of your LVN. Because since it has a low viscosity, okay, the good thing about that is we can use higher concentrations. Higher concentrations of your LVN may be utilized for infiltration and embedding, even higher than 8%. So that's the good thing about it. Okay. And apart from that, and because of this rather, your LBN, it is actually, okay, your LBN is preferred, okay, over ordinary celloidine. It is preferred over ordinary celloidine. Okay. Apart from that, your LVN is considered to be harder as compared to your ordinary celloidine. Thus, we are able to produce harder tissue blocks. Again, what is the significance, class, of the hardness of your blocks and your sample? Okay, the significance of this is that the harder your blocks are, the harder your tissue samples are, after infiltration and embedding, the thinner your sections. Okay, so I repeat, the harder your tissue blocks are, the thinner your sections. Okay, so this will lead to thinner sections. Yan, this will lead to thinner sections. One disadvantage, okay, one disadvantage of the hardness that is observed in your LVN is that, lagay ko na lang this, saglit lang. Okay, we have disadvantages. Yan. So one disadvantages attributed to its hardness, to the hardness of your LVN, is that this can cause cracking. Okay, this can cause cracking of tissue sections. Okay, so cracking of tissue sections, yan, maybe remedied. Okay, maybe remedied. Okay, what is the remedy? We have ang tawag dito, we have you, hindi we have, you add. Sige, lagay ko na nga, nagugulan na ako. Okay, we have the remedy for the cracking of sections. Okay, so we can add plasticizers. Okay, so what are plasticizers? So the plasticizers that you can incorporate, we have your castor oil, okay, castor oil, and then oleum resini and resini. Okay, so add plasticizers. In particular, we have your castor oil and your oleum resini. Okay, so cracking of sections, this is particularly observed in chrome mordanted tissue samples. Okay, so in some references, they presented it as the crumbling of your sections. Okay, crumbling of your sections or cracking of your tissue sections, which is common in chrome mordanted tissue samples. So in order to prevent this, you have to add plasticizers in your low viscosity nitrocellulose. Okay, you have to add plasticizers in your low viscosity nitrocellulose. Okay, class, dito na lang ha, kasi hindi na kasya. Alright, so another disadvantage. Okay, another disadvantage of your LVN is that it is considered to be more explosive than celloidine. Ayan. So it is considered to be more explosive than celloidine. In particular, you can never allow your LVN to become dry. Okay? It has to be marketed even in a wet preparation or with one of the solvents that we use. Okay? So specifically, dry, okay, specifically your dry LVN, okay, so explosions may be or may happen, explosions, or it can explode, okay, explode na lang, explode upon striking or dropping of the container. Okay? So anong ibig sabihin nito? Ibig sabihin niyan, talagang talagang explosive. Okay? This is a very dangerous hazard that is brought about by your LVN. Okay? So dry LVN. So that means in the absence of your solvents, your dry LVN can explode upon striking or dropping of the container. So, yung ibig sabihin ng striking, so talagang Barbie. So say for example, ito yung may laman na ng dry LVN. Okay? And then this is another container containing, of course, another substance. So striking as in, magganon mo lang siya. Okay? So upon striking, boom! Okay. Your dry LVN will explode. Upon dropping of your dry LVN, it will also explode. Okay? So, PTU because PTU talaga. PTU, kawawa ka naman. Kasi nag-explode. Okay? Mag-explode ka kasama yung dry LVN. Alright? So, that's why in order to minimize the hazard that is brought about by your dry LVN, your LVN is always marketed as a wet. Diba? Wet LVN usually talaga siya. Okay. In the book by Gregorius, it was mentioned there wet celoidine, but probably she is referring to your wet LVN. Okay, so wet LVN, so this is all the time with alcohol. Alcohol lang ha, hindi kasama ang ether. Okay, so ang ginagawa dyan, when you buy LVN, it has to be in its wet form. Okay, so wet form meaning it should contain alcohol. The alcohol that is present there will prevent the drying of your LVN because again, dry LVN is explosive. It has or it is liable or susceptible to creating explosions in the laboratory. Okay, so it has to be with alcohol. Ma'am, bakit hindi kasama yung ether? 'Di ba? 'Di ba ang solvents na ginagamit natin ay alcohol at saka ether? Yes, very good thinking. Okay, bakit hindi kasama yung ether class? Because ether is also flammable. Okay, so what we do in the laboratory when we get your wet LVN is that it contains alcohol already, okay, and then you have to add ether. When you use your LVN, that's the time that you're going to add your ether. Okay, otherwise, remember it's very volatile. So it will evaporate. Okay, as compared to your alcohol. When you compare the volatility of your ether and your ether is much volatile. Okay, right? So apart from marketing it or storing it in wet LVN, make sure that the container is tightly covered. Okay, this is to minimize the evaporation of your alcohol. And if ever that your alcohol evaporates, when it condenses, it will go back to your LVN, right? It will turn into liquid again. Okay, so yan. So wet LVN, it has to be with alcohol. And apart from that, your container has to be tightly covered in order to minimize the evaporation or the escape of your alcohol from your wet LVN. Okay, so remember, hindi siya pwedeng maging dry. Okay? Hindi po siya pwedeng maging dry. Dapat wet LVN siya lagi. Okay? Yes, since your alcohol is also a volatile substance, okay, since alcohol is also a volatile substance, we cannot really 100% guarantee, we cannot really completely guarantee that your wet LVN will remain to be wet, okay, all throughout the storage, right? And so, storage of your LVN in the laboratory is actually contraindicated. Especially if you're going to store it for a long period of time. That's a no, 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 no. Do not do that. Otherwise, you're gonna explode. Okay? Ayan. Do not store your LVN in the laboratory for a long period of time, or just do not store it. Yes, because there is no 100% guarantee. Okay, 100% money back. Ano ba yun? Okay, there is no complete guarantee that your LVN will remain to be wet. Thus, okay, you have to dispose your LVN when it is no longer needed. Because when you store it in the laboratory, it will become increasingly dangerous, as your alcohol is also a volatile substance. Okay, so I repeat, storage of your LVN in the laboratory becomes increasingly dangerous because we cannot really completely avoid the evaporation of your alcohol. Okay, so yan. All right, so you have to be very careful when you handle LVN in the laboratory. Okay, yes. So, under your Celoydine processing, we have two methods that we can perform in the laboratory. So, we have your wet method, and then the other one is your dry method. Okay. So, after, ito na class yung, ito na yung sinasabi ko sa laboratory. Okay, na anong pangalan nito, na methods. Okay, this should come out in your schematic diagram. All right, so fixation and dehydration. Okay, fixation. So first we have to perform fixation, and then again after fixation, okay, we perform dehydration. Okay, so after dehydration, the next thing that you're going to do is to immerse your tissue sample in equal parts. Okay, equal parts of your solvent. So that means equal parts of ether and alcohol. Why? Because again, you have to prepare your tissue sample. You have to prepare your tissue sample to the medium that you're going to use for infiltration and infiltration and embedding. And how are you going to do that? So after dehydration, then you make use of ether and alcohol, because these are the solvents which are present in your celloidine. Thus, your ether and alcohol will make your tissue sample compatible with your celloidine. Okay? So how long are you going to immerse it in equal parts of ether and alcohol? You're going to immerse it there for 12 to 24 hours. Okay, for 12 to 24 hours. So after that, you make use of your thin celloidine. Okay, you make use of your thin celloidine. Okay, so the one that is indicated there in your Gregorios, so your thin celloidine, it can have a pangalan nito, a concentration of 2 to 4%. Okay, but more on less than your 4%. O ha, kasi baka malito kayo eh, ma'am, akala ko ba yung 4% ay medium na yun? Yes, tama ka naman. Okay, that's why I am clarifying that it has to be more on the lower concentration, or more on less than 4%. Pero kasi ang kay Gregorios, ang nakalagay doon na thin celloidine doon sa methods or doon sa processing mismo is 2 to 4%. Okay, so thin celloidine, 2 to 4%, more on less than 4%. Okay, so how long are you going to immerse it? Yan, how long are you going to immerse it in your thin celloidine? You have to immerse it for 5 to 5 to 7 days. Okay, 5 to 7 days. So after that, you move on to your medium celloidine. So medium celloidine, we have 4 to 6%. Okay, so we have 4 to 6%. How long are you going to immerse it there? We have 5 to 7 days. Okay, and then lastly, we have your thick celloidine. So your thick celloidine being 8 to 12%. Okay, so we have 8 to 12%. How long are you going to immerse it in your thick celloidine? We have 3 to 5 days. Okay, so we have 3 to 5 days. So just imagine how long your celluloidine processing is, di ba? Okay, 12 to 24 hours, so that's 1 day, plus sabihin na natin 15 days. So you are going to perform infiltration or yes, infiltration and impregnation for about 3 weeks, right? So that's about, tama ba ako? Hindi naman, tama, 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks kang nagpa-process. Okay, so that's why it's really a slow process. And this is also the reason why your paraffin wax processing is considered to be rapid. Because if you compare it with other medium, so the other medium would require longer, okay, longer processing, right? Ayan. So after your infiltration, so you move on with your embedding. So you move on with your embedding. So in embedding, you need to make use of your fresh thick, okay, fresh thick celloidine. All right. So during the embedding process, so again, what happens during embedding? You have to allow your medium to turn or to be converted from its liquid form to its solid form. Okay, so in the case of your celloidine, what allows the conversion of your celloidine from liquid to solid? So we have evaporation of your solvent. So that is also the one that has, or this mechanism has to take place during your embedding, okay, in order for us to produce your celloidine blocks. So how do we how do we perform embedding in using your celloidine? So embedding, this is done using a jar or a desiccator. Okay, so you have to make use of a jar or a desiccator. So say for example, that is your jar or this desiccator. So you have to put your block inside. And so forgive my drawing. Yeah, so you have to put your block inside. Okay, so that's your block inside your jar or your desiccator. Okay, and then of course you have to, ayan, you have to cover it. Okay, you have to cover your desiccator or your jar in order to prevent the immediate, okay, the immediate evaporation of your solvents. So remember that your tissue block, it has to gradually harden. Otherwise, okay, if there is a fast evaporation of your solvent, lagay ko na nga, okay, wait, kulang yung drawing ko, class. Ay, hindi nyo, oh, ano yan ha, cover yan ha. Okay, so this is the cover. The reason why we have to cover your jar is in order to facilitate, okay, in order to facilitate gradual evaporation. All right. So the evaporation of your solvent, it has to be gradual. It has to be, okay, it has to be gradual. Why? Yes, why? To prevent, okay, so this is to prevent bubble formation. Yan. So if you are going to allow the evaporation of your solvent quickly, this will lead to bubble formation in your block. And of course, we don't want that to happen because we will be encountering problems later on when we do our sectioning. Okay, so yan. So dapat gradual evaporation lang po. So in order to facilitate evaporation of your solvent, okay, we can remove Okay, we can remove, but not all the time ha, you remove your top or your cover once in a while for a few seconds, and then you have to cover again. Okay, so this is just to facilitate the evaporation, okay, the adequate evaporation of your solvent from your block. Okay, ayan. Yes, so how would you know that embedding is already complete? Okay, so we will be able to know if embedding is complete if your fingerprint is no longer seen when you touch the block surface. So say for example, di ba? Say for example, this is your block. Okay, block. This is your block. So in order for us to know if embedding is complete, you just touch your, okay, you just touch your block. Okay. And what do we want? There should be no fingerprint mark that is left on the black surface. So if that is the case, then you know that embedding is complete already. So for example, upon touching your celloidine block and there is a fingerprint mark on the surface, that means embedding is not yet complete. Okay, so your fingerprint should no longer leave a mark on your black surface in order for us to know that the embedding procedure is already complete. Okay, and depending on the method that we are talking about, okay, um, your wet method requires storage. Okay, your wet method requires storage in 70% to 80% alcohol. Storage. So this require or this uses 70 to 80% alcohol. Okay, until sectioning is performed. Yan. So that's the reason why we call it your wet method. Yes. So actually, the two methods in celoidine processing, they are characterized by the need to store your celoidine blocks. Okay, so in particular, your wet method, which is utilized for bones, teeth, large brain sections, and whole organs, would require storage in 70 to 80% alcohol. So that means the wetness, kumbaga, okay, I'm sorry for the term, but this is really how we discuss it in Histopath, okay? The wetness, okay, of your celloidine block has to be maintained. It has to be stored in 70 to 80% alcohol. So this storage requirement, so this is done until you are going to perform sectioning. And it is to prevent dehydration, okay, and shrinkage. This storage procedure prevents dehydration and shrinkage of your tissue sample. That's why you have to store it. Okay? Ayan. All right. So that is for your wet method. Okay? So that is for your wet method. So your dry method, on the other hand, so this is utilized for whole eye samples. Okay, and the reason why we call it your dry method is because of the fact that it does not require any storage. So that means your tissue block or the wetness of your tissue block is not necessary. So instead of storing it in your 70 to 80% alcohol, what we do in the dry method is we incorporate your Gilson's mixture during embedding. Okay? Ayan. So I repeat. Your dry method, it does not require storage, but it requires the use or the addition of your Gilson's mixture during your embedding. So that means the thick, okay, the fresh thick celloidine that is used for embedding should contain, okay, your Gilson's mixture. Your Gelson's mixture is composed of equal parts of your chloroform and your cedarwood oil. Okay. So the presence of your cedarwood oil will contradict the storage. Yan. So I repeat, the presence of your cedarwood oil in your Gelson's mixture actually contradicts the storage in alcohol. Why? Because your alcohol will tend to dissolve out your cedarwood oil. Okay? Yes. So the purpose naman of incorporating your Gelson's mixture to your celoidine during embedding is for your tissue sample to be cleared. Okay? So your Gelson's mixture will again render transparency or translucence, okay, to your tissue sample. Yan. So that's the reason why. Okay? Yes. And the presence of your cedarwood oil contradicts the use of your alcohol during storage. So that's why no storage is required for your dry method. Right? So that is your celoidine. Ang haba pala ng celoidine. 50 minutes. Okay. So anyway, tapusin ko na to guys. Okay. Para isang video na lang. Alright, so I hope you learned a lot from celoidine. So that is how we perform your celoidine processing, and these are the methods of your celoidine processing. Okay, so now we move on to another medium that we use in the laboratory, and that's your plastic. Okay, so mga plastic dyan, well, charot. Okay, ayan, plastic po. So again, what is the other name for your plastic? Yes, we call it your resin, okay? And actually, just like what I have mentioned before, we like plastic in the laboratory. We like plastic in histopath. Why? Because the developments or the invention, kumbaga, of your plastic medium provided superior results for light microscopic studies, especially if we are going to consider your hard tissues, okay, for high resolution microscopy. Alright, saglit lang class. Okay, parang di ako nawala, ano? Okay, secret. Ay, sorry. Tuwan-tuwa. Ayan na naman, tuwan-tuwa na naman ako. Okay, yes, just like what I have mentioned, we like plastic in histopath, okay, because it provided superior results, especially when we consider the thickness of the sections which we are able to produce when we use plastic in the laboratory, okay. Apart from that, since plastic is inherently harder as compared to your paraffin, we can actually even use plastic for undecalcified bone samples. Okay, for very hard tissue samples like undecalcified bone. Okay? Yes. So ibig sabihin class, if you have plastic in the laboratory, since it is hard, ganun katigas ang plastic sa laboratory, that you can even use it for undecalcified bone samples. So that means no need to perform your decalcification process, since we all know that there are inherent or unavoidable consequences of performing your decalcification. So if you have plastic in the laboratory, okay, might as well avoid performing or might as well skip performing decalcification. Because plastic can be used even for undecalcified bone samples. That's how hard your plastic is. Ganun katigas ang plastic. Diba? O, parang yung plastic mong pakilala, ganun katigas ang kanyang mukha. Ayan, ganun na lang isipin nyo para lagi nyong, so that you can always remember. Okay, so plastic is so hard as the face of the plastic person that you know. Okay, yes, and just like what we have mentioned, and yes, just like what we have mentioned before, what's the good thing about hardness of your medium? So the harder your medium is, the thinner your sections. So that means since plastic is inherently hard, then you are able to produce sections that are even thinner than 4 to 6 micrometers. Okay, so you can, kaya nga, high resolution microscopy. Okay, that's why you have to underline that high resolution microscopy because it allows even electron microscopy to be performed during examination. Why? Again, you are able to produce very thin sections, even thinner than what is required for routine examination. So that means thinner than 4 to 6 micrometers. Okay, and provided that you use the correct type of microtome, we are not even talking about micrometers anymore. Okay, we are not even talking about micrometers here. We are talking about nanometers thickness of your sections already. Yes, you are able to achieve that if you use plastic in the laboratory. Kaya nga sabi ko, we like plastic. We love plastic in histopath. Why? Kasi matigas siya. Sing tigas ng mukha ng kilala mong plastic. Okay, ayan. Yes, thin. Very thin sections. Wow, nice. Very nice. Okay. And your plastic, this is utilized for renal biopsies. Okay, apart from hard tissues, it can also be utilized for renal biopsies. You can utilize it even for your bone marrow biopsies. Okay, and we actually have three types. Yes, we have three types of plastics in the laboratory. Saglit lang. Okay, so we have three types of plastic in the laboratory. Okay, saglit nga lang po. Okay, yes, I'm back again. O, di ba? Parang wala. Hindi ako nawala. Okay, yes. All right. So, in the laboratory, we have three plastics. Okay? Sino yung mga plastic dyan sa lab natin? All right. So, what are the three plastics in the laboratory? Three types of plastics. We have, of course, your epoxy. Okay, one is your epoxy. The other one, we have your polyester. Okay, plastics. And then lastly, we have your acrylic plastics. Okay, so what we will be discussing under plastics are just your epoxy and your acrylic plastics. We will not be discussing your polyester plastic. Why? Because it only has a historical significance in histopath. Okay, so that means we don't use it anymore in the laboratory. But before, your polyester was utilized for electron microscopy. Okay, yeah, so historically speaking, that's the historical significance of your polyester. So it was utilized. It was formerly utilized for electron microscopy. Okay, however, with the advent of your epoxy plastics, we no longer use your polyester because your epoxy plastics are way better as compared to your polyester. So that means we are able to produce tissue slides which are of better quality if we make use of epoxy instead of your polyester. Okay, so that's why epoxy na ang ginagamit natin. We don't use polyester anymore for electron microscopy. Okay, yes. So again, when it comes to epoxy, again, and so let us discuss your epoxy. Okay, so your epoxy, when it comes to its components, okay, so it is actually composed of a balanced mixture of your epoxy plastic, your catalyst, and then of course your accelerator. Okay, so your catalyst, this will promote the polymerization of your epoxy plastics. Okay, so we also have your accelerator, which will also enhance the hardening of your epoxy plastic. Okay, so under your epoxy plastics, we have yet another three types of epoxy. We have your araldite, otherwise referred to as your bisphenol A, and then we have your glycerol-based, which is referred to as your epon, and then epon or epon. Okay? And then we have your cyclohexene. Okay, yan. Cyclohexene dioxide, which is otherwise referred to as your spur. Okay? Yes. So, your epoxy plastics, they differ based on the rate the rate at which they are able to infiltrate or penetrate your tissue sample. Okay? And their ability to penetrate. Sige. Saglit lang, class. Okay ko lang. Penetration ability. All right. So their ability to penetrate your tissue sample is dependent upon several factors. Okay, so I repeat, it is dependent upon several factors. Actually, there are two factors which we consider which affect the penetration ability of your tissue sample. Okay, hello. I'm back again. Yes, kasi naman nang-istorbo. Okay, ayan. So, yun. So, just like what I have mentioned, there are two factors which affect the penetration ability of your epoxy plastics. Okay, number one, of course, would be the size of the molecules. And then, another one would be the purity. Okay, the purity of your solution. Okay, your epoxy plastic solution. Yes, ayan. So these are the two things that we will be considering in order for us to understand why your epoxy plastics have this kind of penetration characteristic. Okay. All right. So your aral dyed, it has a slow. Nakalagay dyan sa ano ninyo yan. Sa inyong mga modules. It has a slow infiltration. Okay. Rate, slow infiltration rate. Why? Because, ayan, why? Because your araldite, okay, the molecules of your araldite are considered to be large. Okay, your araldite is considered to be a large molecule. Thus, it has a slow infiltration rate. Okay, slow infiltration. Slow penetration. Okay? It has a slow infiltration or slow penetration rate. Okay? Because of its large size. Ayan. Saglit lang, class. Ang pangit. Saan ko ilalagay? Ganyan na lang. Ayan. So that's why it has a slow infiltration or slow penetration rate because of the fact that it is a large molecule. Okay. Another when it comes to the when it comes to the penetration rate of your glycerol based or your epon as compared to your spur, your epon is again it is slower as compared to your spur, but it is faster as compared to your bisphenol A. So meaning nasa gitna po siya. It is at the middle when it comes to its penetration rate and if we are going to compare it to your araldite and to your spur. Okay? The reason why it is it is faster than your araldite is because of the fact that, of course, it is a smaller molecule, and we also take into consideration the fact that it is less viscous. Okay, it is less viscous as compared to your araldite. I repeat, it is a smaller molecule as compared to your araldite. Thus, it is less viscous. Okay? And again, if it is smaller, then it is faster than your araldite. The problem with your glycerol base is that the one that is available or that is manufactured is admixed with isomers. Okay? So I repeat, your glycerol base, the one that is available commercially, is admixed with isomers. So that means the presence of your isomers affects the purity of your glycerol-based plastic. Okay, yes, it is not pure. Thus, it has a slower penetration rate as compared to your spur. Okay, yes. And then, the last one, we have your cyclohexene dioxide. It has a very low viscosity. Ayan, it has a very low viscosity. Again, due to the fact that the molecules of your cyclohexene dioxide are small molecules. And apart from that, it can be manufactured in its pure form. Okay, it can be manufactured in its pure form. So that means ito small plus pure siya. Yan, it is small and it is pure. So that's why your cyclohexene dioxide infiltrates the fastest. It has the highest, okay, it has the highest infiltration, okay, highest infiltration or penetration rate among the three. Okay, so again, balikan natin ha, what we are going to consider are the size and purity of your solutions. Okay, so your aral dyed, it is large. Yes, and of course, size would be a major or yes, the main determinant here as compared to purity. So since it is large, it is the slowest. Your glycerol-based, okay, it is composed of small molecules, thus the lower viscosity. However, it is not pure. Okay, it is not pure. Kaya nasa gitna siya. The fastest is your cyclohexene dioxide or spur because, number one, the molecules are small, thus the lower viscosity. Okay, apart from that, it can be manufactured in its pure form. Thus, it has the highest, sorry for the spelling, highest infiltration or penetration rate. Okay, sorry for the spelling of rate. All right, so yan, I hope you were able to understand this portion. Okay, yan. So, for the characteristics of your epoxy plastic, okay, so number one, it is considered to be hydrophobic. Okay. Yes. Is this significant? Yes. Why? Because this will affect its compatibility with your stains. Okay. So since it is hydrophobic, one of the disadvantages of your epoxy plastic is that it is not compatible with a wide range of stain. Okay, due to its hydrophobic nature. Remember, one of the commonly used solvents that we use to prepare your stains is your distilled water. Okay, so that's why hydrophobic or hydrophilic nature of your reagents is important in order for us to assess its compatibility with your stains, okay, or your staining technique. So what we want are your hydrophilic, okay, are your hydrophilic reagents. Yan. So that's the problem with your epoxy. It is hydrophobic. Okay, meaning it's not compatible with a wide range of stains. Okay, apart from that, your epoxy tends to reduce the genicity of your sample, okay, of the cells and of the other components present in your tissue sample. So again, this is significant when we are to perform your immunohistochemistry or immunocytochemistry. Okay, immunohistochemical and immunocytochemical methods. Because remember that in your immuno methods, we need your antigens. Your antigens have to be intact. Otherwise, they will not be demonstrated using your immuno techniques. Okay? Kasi antigen-antibody techniques tayo pag immuno. Alright. So apart from that, another disadvantage of your epoxy is it causes sensitization on skin contact and inhalation. Okay, so you probably have discussed sensitization in your immunology and serology. Okay, so when we get sensitized, ayan, there will be a heightened response of the immune system to the presence of a particular foreign material, okay, or a foreign substance. Right? And then lastly, your epoxy contains toxic components. Yan. So in particular, I would like to mention your vinyl, okay, vinyl cyclohexane. Vinyl cyclohexane dioxide. Okay, so your vinyl cyclohexane dioxide, otherwise referred to as your VCD. So this is a carcinogenic substance that is present in your epoxy plastic. Okay, yan. So it has toxic components. All right, so those are the things that you have to remember for your epoxy. Okay, next, let us go to your acrylic naman. Okay, so your epoxy, it is utilized mainly for electron microscopy. Okay, but for your acrylic, it is utilized for high resolution light microscopy. So still light microscopy ha, not electron microscopy. For electron microscopy, we use your epoxy. For high-resolution light microscopy, we make use of your acrylic plastic. Okay? So there are two forms of acrylic plastics which are available. We have your glycol methacrylates. Okay? And then the other one is your methyl methacrylates. Okay? So your glycol methacrylates, the most important characteristic of this acrylic plastic that we want is it's hydrophilic. Okay? Yan. So the most important characteristic that we are considering is its hydrophilic nature. Okay? So since it is hydrophilic, the good thing about your GMA is that it is compatible with a lot of staining techniques. Okay, so it is compatible with various staining techniques. All right, so that's the good thing about that. Another type of acrylic plastic is your MMA or your methyl methacrylate. Okay, your methyl methacrylate is valued for its hardness. Ayan, so it is valued for its hardness. Your methyl methacrylate, it is actually considered to be the ideal medium for undecalcified bone and other hard tissues. So since it is hard, you can use it for undecalcified bone and other tissues. It is the ideal medium for undecalcified bone and other hard tissues. Okay, ayan. So one component that is present in your acrylic plastic is your benzoyl peroxide. Okay, your benzoyl peroxide, this actually undergoes decomposition. It is a catalyst that is present in your acrylic plastics. And it undergoes decomposition and it serves as a substrate for your polymerization. So in short, okay, your benzoyl peroxide enhances or facilitates the polymerization of your acrylic plastic so that it will be converted to its solid form. Okay, so that it will be converted to its solid form. All right. So in the laboratory, there are several manufactured products that contain resin and paraffin. Okay. A good example is your Picolite. Ayan. Yung Paraplast kasi, it contains more paraffin than your plastic. Okay. That's why it is classified under your paraffin wax. Your resin paraffin, a good example would be your Picolite. Okay, it contains more resin as compared to paraffin. So this is one example, okay, of a plastic embedding medium that we can use in the laboratory. We have your Picolite, okay, although it contains paraffin still, but the major component would be your plastic or your resin. Right? So yeah. So those are your plastic embedding media that we can use in the laboratory, as well as their advantages, disadvantages, characteristics, and uses in the laboratory. Okay, so now we move on to the last one. We have your gelatin. Okay, so your gelatin, it is rarely used in the laboratory. O yan, huwag na natin pag-usapan. Okay, joke lang. Alright. Tawa na lang ako. Okay. Your gelatin, this is rarely used in the laboratory. Okay. The applications of your gelatin include, number one, if there is a need to avoid your dehydration process. Okay. So if there is a need to avoid your dehydration process, because we all know that dehydration, particularly the use of your alcohol, can be damaging to the different chemicals, histochemicals which are present in your tissue sample. All right. So since you are able to avoid dehydration when you use gelatin, one of its uses is that it is used for histochemical and enzyme studies. Okay. Apart from that, it is also utilized for delicate specimens. Okay, and for frozen sections. Okay, ayan. So your gelatin, in relation to its use for the preparation of your frozen sections, your gelatin actually prevents the fragmentation of tough and friable tissues. Okay, so I repeat, your gelatin in conjunction to the preparation of, in relation rather to the preparation of your frozen sections, prevents the fragmentation of tough and friable tissues. Okay? Yes. So one important um, requirement with the use of your gelatin is that, the volume should be 25 times the tissue sample. So I repeat, the volume has to be 25 times the tissue sample. And apart from that, for the size, tissue size requirement, particularly the thickness, your tissue sample should be not more than 2 to 3 millimeters thick. Yes. So it has to be, or it should not be more than 2 to 3 millimeters thick. Okay. And again, the volume, it should be 25 times the volume of your tissue sample. Okay. Ayan. Okay. So one important characteristic of your gelatin that you have to remember is that it is water soluble. So again, just like for your carbo wax, what steps can you omit if a particular medium is already water soluble? So gelatin processing does not require dehydration and clearing. Okay, so that means after fixation, and then you have to wash excess fixative present in your tissue sample. After that, you can proceed now to your gelatin. Okay. Apart from that, your gelatin has a low melting point as compared to your paraffin wax. So that means you don't need to make use of high temperatures in order to maintain the liquid state of your gelatin. Thus, your gelatin does not cause any over-hardening that is usually attributed to heat exposure. Okay, so how do we perform your gelatin? So again, we perform, ito ka na lang class ilagay sa gilid. Okay, so again, we perform, okay, so we perform fixation, right? So after fixation, what is the next step? The next step would be washing, right, of your tissue sample. And then after that, you can proceed to gelatin processing already. Okay, so you can omit dehydration and clearing since gelatin is water soluble. So for the first concentration of gelatin, we have 10%, 10% gelatin plus phenol ito always. Plus 1% phenol, okay? You are going to immerse it in this formulation for 24 hours, okay? So after your 10% gelatin plus 1% phenol, the next concentration that you use is 20%, again plus 1% phenol, okay? Plus 1% phenol. So how long are you going to immerse it in this mixture or solution? We have 12 hours. Okay, and then lastly, we use another 20% phenol plus 1%. This is a fresh mixture or solution. So 20% plus 1% phenol. Okay. And you have to perform this last step in ref. Okay, ref po ito. Ref temperature until embedding. Okay, until not embedding. Until impregnation or infiltration and embedding, okay, are complete. Yan. So, ganyan. I repeat. So, first we have fixation and then washing. And then after that, you immerse it in 10% gelatin plus 1% phenol for 24 hours. Immerse it again in 20% gelatin plus 1% phenol for 12 hours. And then for the last one, we have 20% plus 1% phenol. So this has to be carried out at room temperature until impregnation and embedding are complete. Okay? So for your gelatin blocks, you have two gelatin. Okay, gelatin blocks. Okay, so you have to immerse it again in 10% formalin. For how long? We have 12 to 24 hours. Okay, so immersion in 10% formalin for 12 to 24 hours. So this will adequately harden tissue samples. Okay, so this will adequately harden your tissue samples. Okay, so by the way, class, the 1% phenol that is incorporated for every gelatin concentration or solution, this serves to prevent mold formation. Okay, so it prevents the growth of molds or the formation of molds in your gelatin. Okay, so those are the other media that we can use for your processing. Okay, for the other parts of your ano pangalan nito of lesson 6. Okay, so I will no longer include it in your quiz this Thursday, but I will include it in your exam. Okay, so I will just give another video for that. Okay, again, it will no longer be included in your quiz. It will be included in your exam. Yung embedding molds plus orientation. Okay, so yes, bye. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye. Yes, stay safe.